The dismissal. The shuttle descended through layers of shimmering energy shields that protected the apex assembly. Commander Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the viewing port, watching as the massive structure grew larger with each passing second. It looked like a crystalline flower blooming in the void of space, its petals made of materials that seemed to shift between solid matter and pure light. Impressive, isn't it? Director James Okafor stood beside her, his dark eyes reflecting the dancing colors outside. He was humanity's lead scientist for this mission, a man who had spent 40 years studying physics and dreaming of this moment. Elena nodded but said nothing. Impressive was an understatement. The Apex Assembly had stood at the center of galactic civilization for 8,000 years. It was older than the pyramids, older than written human history, older than agriculture itself. And now, humanity was about to knock on its door. Behind them, Lieutenant Sarah Kim checked her uniform for the 5th time. The young officer was nervous, though she tried to hide it. Professor Wei Zhang sat quietly in the corner, his weathered hands folded in his lap. At 73, he was the oldest member of their delegation and the wisest. He had taught 3 generations of diplomats the art of patience. Landing sequence initiated, the pilot announced. We'll dock in 5 minutes. Elena turned away from the window and faced her team. For humans representing 8 billion more back home. For voices speaking for an entire species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. Remember what we practiced, she said quietly. We are not here to beg. We are not here to apologize for being young. We are here to present humanity as we are, with all our flaws and all our potential. James smiled slightly. And if they laugh at us? Then we smile back, Elena replied. And we remember that every species in that chamber was once where we are now. The docking process was smooth. The Apex Assembly's technology was so advanced that Elena barely felt the connection engage. When the airlock opened, they stepped into a corridor that seemed to stretch into infinity. The walls were transparent, showing the vast interior of the station where thousands of beings moved about their business. An escort waited for them. It was tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished silver and eyes that had no pupils, just swirling pools of violet light. It spoke without moving its mouth, its words appearing directly in their minds through translation technology humanity was still decades away from understanding. Welcome, humans. I am Guide 17. Follow me to the presentation chamber. They walked for what felt like hours, though Elena's watch showed only 12 minutes had passed. The corridor led them through sections where gravity shifted, where the air tasted like copper, where the light bent in ways that made her stomach turn. This was a place built for dozens of different species, each with their own needs and biology. Finally, they entered the presentation chamber. It was smaller than Elena had expected, perhaps the size of a concert hall back on Earth. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in grandeur. The ceiling was a window into space itself, showing the swirling colors of a nearby nebula. The floor was something like glass, but beneath it moved images of countless worlds, each one a member of the Interstellar Coalition. Seated in a semicircle were the council members. 23 beings representing 23 species, each one older and more advanced than humanity. Elena recognized some from the briefings. There was Archon Zephyros, the council leader, whose body seemed to be made of living crystal that chimed softly with each movement. Beside him sat Trade Coordinator Nexus, a hive-mind entity that appeared as a floating sphere of interconnected insects. Others were harder to identify, beings that existed in different states of matter or operated on wavelengths human eyes could barely perceive. Commander Elena Vasquez of Earth, Archon Zephyros's voice was like wind chimes in a storm, beautiful and cold. You have traveled far to stand before us. The Council recognizes your presence. Elena stepped forward. Behind her, her team arranged themselves in a line. She had spent 6 months preparing for this moment, writing and rewriting her speech, practicing her tone, her posture, her every gesture. Honorable Council, she began, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. Humanity comes before you with humility and hope. We are a young species, this is true. Our civilization has existed for only a brief moment in cosmic terms. But in that moment, we have achieved what we believe demonstrates our worthiness to join your coalition. She gestured, and James stepped forward with a holographic display. Images appeared in the air between them and the Council. Cities of light stretching across continents. Ships capable of crossing the stars. Medical technology that had eliminated diseases that once killed millions. Art and music from every culture on Earth, a symphony of human creativity. We have learned to harness the power of atoms, Elena continued. We have decoded the building blocks of life itself. We have created machines that can think and learn. We have looked into the depths of space and asked questions about our place in the universe. She paused, letting the images shift to show humanity's darker moments as well. Wars and destruction, pollution and waste, the mistakes of a species still learning to control its own power. We do not come before you as a perfect people, Elena said. We have made terrible mistakes. We have fought wars among ourselves. We have damaged our own world through ignorance and greed. But we have also learned from these mistakes. We have made peace where there was conflict. We have healed wounds we ourselves created. We have chosen, again and again, to reach for something better than what we were. The images faded. Elena looked at each council member in turn. We ask to join the Interstellar Coalition not because we believe we have nothing left to learn, but because we know we have everything to learn. We ask to join because we believe that diversity of thought and experience makes any community stronger. We ask to join because we dream of a future where humanity contributes to galactic civilization rather than stands apart from it. Silence filled the chamber. Elena stood perfectly still, her hands at her sides, waiting for the response that would determine humanity's future among the stars. Then, from somewhere to her left, a sound began. It started as a low rumble, then grew into something else. Something that made Elena's stomach sink. Laughter. It came from a being that looked like a collection of floating tentacles arranged around a central eye. The tentacles writhed as it laughed, a wet, slapping sound that echoed through the chamber. Other council members joined in. Different sounds, different expressions of amusement, but all carrying the same meaning. They were laughing at humanity. Trade Coordinator Nexus's sphere pulsed with colors that Elena's briefing had told her indicated contempt. Charming, the hivemind's voice buzzed in her head. The children have learned to play with fire and now they wish to join those who have mastered the stars. Another council member, a being made of what looked like living smoke, drifted forward. Your ships are crude. Your medicine is elementary. Your understanding of physics is laughably incomplete. You split atoms? We manipulate the fabric of space itself. You decoded life? We create new forms of life from pure energy. Elena felt James tense beside her. She heard Sarah's sharp intake of breath. Professor Zhang remained perfectly still, but she could sense his disappointment like a physical weight. Archon Zephyros raised one crystalline appendage, and the laughter subsided. The human speaks well, he said, his chiming voice almost kind. But words are not achievements. You have existed for what? 200,000 years? Some species in this chamber have records older than your entire civilization. He leaned forward slightly, light refracting through his body in patterns that hurt to look at. You have reached the stars, yes. Congratulations. But reaching the stars is only the first step of an infinite journey. You are like infants who have learned to walk and now believe themselves ready to run marathons. Trade Coordinator Nexus pulsed again. Perhaps they could be useful in some capacity. Their manual dexterity seems adequate. We have mining operations that require small hands. Or perhaps they could provide entertainment. I understand they create vibrations with their mouths that they find pleasing. More laughter. Elena's hands clenched into fists, then deliberately relaxed. She had prepared for dismissal. She had prepared for rejection. But she had not prepared for mockery, for the casual cruelty of being so ancient and powerful that they could not imagine anything smaller than themselves having value. Professor Zhang stepped forward. His movement was slow but deliberate, and something in his manner made several council members pause. If I may speak, he said quietly. His English was accented, shaped by a lifetime spent in Beijing before joining the diplomatic corps. I am an old man by human standards. I have lived 73 years, which I know is nothing to most of you. In that time, I have studied the histories and philosophies of my people. He looked around the chamber, meeting alien eyes with calm dignity. There is a saying among my ancestors, do not judge a book by its cover. Another says, the tallest tree was once a seed. You look at humanity and see only what we are now, young and weak and inexperienced. But have you considered what we might become? A council member that resembled a floating geometric shape rotated slowly. We have seen 1,000 species rise and fall. We know exactly what you will become. You will grow slowly, make the same mistakes every young species makes, and perhaps in a few thousand years, you will be ready to join us. Or perhaps not, Trade Coordinator Nexus added. Many species plateau. Many reach a certain level of development and can go no further. Your biology may have limitations you do not yet understand. Archon Zephyros chimed softly, calling for attention. The Council has discussed humanity's petition. We have reviewed your achievements and your history. We have reached a decision. Elena's heart beat faster. This was it, the moment that would define everything that came after. The Interstellar Coalition offers humanity a place within our structure, Zephyros continued. Not as full members, but as a protected developing species. You will surrender control of your solar system to Coalition oversight. You will accept guidance from a mentor species who will direct your growth and prevent you from making dangerous mistakes. You will not expand beyond your current territory without explicit permission. You will share all scientific discoveries with the Coalition for review and approval. He paused, letting the terms sink in. In exchange, we will protect you from threats you cannot comprehend. We will provide technology appropriate to your level of understanding. We will ensure your species survives its dangerous adolescence. It is a generous offer, more than many young species receive. Elena looked at her team. She saw James's face pale with anger. She saw Sarah's eyes fill with tears of frustration. She saw Professor Zhang's expression of profound sadness. They were offering a cage. A beautiful cage, perhaps, dressed up in protective language and kind promises. But a cage nonetheless. Humanity would become a pet, a curiosity, a species kept in carefully controlled conditions for its own good. Every decision she made from this moment would echo through human history. If she accepted, humanity would be safe but controlled, protected but powerless. If she refused, they would face the galaxy alone, without allies or support. Elena thought of Earth, so far away. She thought of the billions of people who had trusted her to speak for them. She thought of her daughter, 7 years old, who had asked her if she would meet aliens and make friends with them. She thought of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. The delegation from Earth requires time to consider this offer, Elena said. Her voice was calm, professional, empty of emotion. We will provide our response within 1 hour. Trade Coordinator Nexus pulsed with what might have been satisfaction. Of course. Take all the time you need. We have waited 8,000 years to extend this offer. We can wait a little longer. As Elena turned to leave, she heard the laughter begin again, softer now but still present. The council thought the decision was already made. They thought humanity would accept because the alternative was unthinkable. They had no idea what was coming. Elena led her team back through the winding corridors to their shuttle. None of them spoke until the door sealed behind them and they were alone in the small vessel that had brought them across the stars. Then Director James Okafor slammed his fist against the wall. Protected developing species, he spat. They want to put us in a zoo. They want to control us, Sarah added, her voice shaking. Everything we discover, everything we create, would belong to them. Professor Zhang sat down slowly. They cannot imagine, he said quietly, that we might choose freedom over safety. Elena stood at the front of the shuttle, looking out at the apex assembly. It really was beautiful, a monument to thousands of years of cooperation and advancement. Humanity could be part of that. All it would cost was everything that made them human. My grandmother, Elena said suddenly, survived the Beijing floods of 2089. She was 15. The water came so fast that people didn't have time to evacuate. She watched her building collapse. She spent 3 days on a rooftop with 50 other people, no food, no clean water, rescue helicopters unable to reach them because of the storm. She turned to face her team. When they finally got rescued, a foreign reporter asked her if she wished she had lived somewhere safer. She told him, safety without dignity is just a comfortable prison. I would rather face danger as a free person than live forever as a protected pet. James looked at her. You know what you're about to do, don't you? Yes, Elena replied. I'm about to make a decision that will either be remembered as humanity's greatest mistake or our finest moment. She activated the communication system, recording a message that would be delivered to the Council. This message is for the Interstellar Coalition. Humanity withdraws its petition for membership. We require nothing from the Coalition. We thank the Council for their consideration and wish them well in their continued governance of galactic affairs. She stopped the recording. 23 seconds. That was all it took to reject 8,000 years of galactic civilization. That's it? Sarah asked. No explanation? No demands? No negotiation? That's it, Elena confirmed. We give them nothing to argue with, nothing to negotiate. We simply walk away. Professor Zhang nodded slowly. Like water flowing around a stone. We do not fight them. We simply go where they are not. They returned to the presentation chamber one final time. The council was waiting, expecting a quick acceptance followed by celebrations and formalities. Archon Zephyros chimed softly as Elena approached. Ambassador, have you reached your decision? Elena stopped in the center of the chamber. She stood very straight, her hands clasped behind her back in a military posture she had learned decades ago. She looked at Archon Zephyros, then at Trade Coordinator Nexus, then at each of the 23 council members in turn. Humanity withdraws its petition, she said clearly. We require nothing from the Coalition. We wish you well. Confusion rippled through the chamber. This was not the script they had expected. This was not submission or negotiation or even angry rejection. This was something they had not prepared for, simple, dignified refusal. Commander Vasquez, Archon Zephyros chimed more sharply. Perhaps you misunderstand our offer. This is an extraordinary opportunity. We are offering protection, guidance, access to technology beyond your comprehension. Elena bowed slightly, a gesture of respect but not subservience. The Coalition's generosity is acknowledged. Humanity's decision stands. She turned and began walking toward the exit. Her team followed. James walked with his shoulders back. Sarah had stopped crying and now moved with military precision. Professor Zhang walked slowly but steadily, his old body carrying him with dignity earned over 7 decades of life. Behind them, voices rose in confusion and anger. Trade Coordinator Nexus buzzed urgently, "You cannot simply leave. There are protocols, procedures, agreements to sign." But Elena did not stop. She did not turn around. She did not say another word. The Council could not comprehend it. In 8,000 years of galactic governance, no species had ever walked away from their offer. Some had negotiated for better terms. Some had accepted immediately. Some had been too primitive to even receive an offer. But none had simply refused and departed in silence. As the human shuttle disengaged from the Apex Assembly and turned toward distant Earth, Archon Zephyros stood in the empty presentation chamber. Other council members had already left, dismissing the humans as foolish children who would return when reality hit them. But Zephyros had lived for 600 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species evolve and go extinct. And something about the way the human commander had walked away, with her head high and her dignity intact, reminded him of something he had not thought about in centuries. It reminded him of how his own species had once been, long ago, before they became powerful and comfortable and certain of their place in the universe. It reminded him of what ambition looked like before it was tempered by 8,000 years of bureaucracy and control. The crystalline being chimed softly to himself, a sound like distant bells that no one else would hear. Perhaps, he whispered to the empty chamber, we should have paid more attention to what drives them rather than what they have already achieved. But the moment passed. He dismissed the thought and returned to the business of governing a galaxy that had remained unchanged for thousands of years. He did not yet understand that change was coming whether the Council was ready for it or not. And he certainly did not understand that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their achievements. It was their absolute refusal to accept limits that others tried to place on them. The Awakening. 75 years had passed since Commander Elena Vasquez walked away from the Apex Assembly. She had died at the age of 93, surrounded by grandchildren who bore her name and her stubbornness. Her funeral had been attended by millions, not in person but through holographic projection, as humans across 17 star systems paused to honor the woman who had chosen freedom over safety. Commander Marcus Chen had been one of those children watching the funeral. He was Elena's great-nephew, though he had never met her. She had died 3 years before he was born. But he had grown up with her legend, had studied her decision in the academy, had written his thesis on the psychological impact of the Apex rejection on human development. Now he stood on the bridge of the UHSF Perseverance, watching his fleet hold formation around the colony of New Horizons. 12 ships, each one a testament to what humanity had achieved in isolation. They were not large by the standards of older species, but they were fast and efficient and deadly in ways the galaxy had not seen before. "Commander," his communications officer called out. Lieutenant Rivera was young, barely 25, but she had proven herself capable during the Kepler crisis 2 years ago. "We're receiving a transmission. It's coming from outside our patrol zone." Marcus turned from the observation window. "Source: unknown vessel, sir. But the signature matches Interstellar Coalition design. They're requesting permission to approach." The bridge fell silent. In 75 years, the Coalition had not contacted humanity once. After the Apex rejection, they had simply watched as human ships began appearing in new systems, as human colonies spread across space, as human technology developed along paths no one had anticipated. "Scan them," Marcus ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to know everything about that ship before they get within weapons range." The tactical officer, a stern woman named Park Ji-won, worked quickly. Data streamed across her display, and Marcus watched her expression change from concentration to surprise. "Sir," she said slowly, "the ship is old. I mean ancient. The power signature matches Coalition designs from at least 5,000 years ago. Their engines are running at 70% efficiency. Their shielding technology is something we studied in history class." Marcus exchanged glances with his executive officer, Commander Thomas Okonkwo. Thomas was 43, old enough to remember when Coalition technology had seemed like magic. Now he looked at the readings and frowned. "Are they in distress?" Marcus asked. "No sir," Rivera replied. "They seem fully functional. Just outdated by our current standards." Marcus considered his options. 75 years ago, humanity had walked away from the galaxy's most powerful alliance. They had chosen isolation and uncertainty over control and safety. That choice had shaped everything that came after. Human scientists had been forced to solve their own problems, to innovate without access to ancient knowledge, to push boundaries because there was no one else to push them. The results had been extraordinary. Humanity had developed faster-than-light drives that used quantum tunneling instead of the Coalition's spacefolding technology. They were smaller, more efficient, and could travel twice as far on the same energy. Human medical technology had advanced to the point where diseases that Coalition species accepted as inevitable could be cured in days. Human artificial intelligence had evolved into something the galaxy had never seen, true partnerships between human creativity and machine processing power. All because they had no choice but to innovate or die. Grant them permission to dock, Marcus decided. But keep weapons charged and shields at full power. And have security teams ready at the airlock. The Coalition vessel took 30 minutes to complete a docking procedure that a human ship could have done in 5. Marcus waited in the docking bay with a security detail, watching as the ancient airlock cycled through protocols that humanity had abandoned decades ago. When the door finally opened, 3 beings emerged. Marcus recognized 2 of them from his xenobiology studies. The leader was something called a Vesh, a species with pale blue skin and too many joints in their limbs. Behind it came a Thrynn, a creature that looked like a collection of floating crystals held together by electromagnetic fields. The third being was unfamiliar, something that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. The Vesh stepped forward and performed a gesture that Marcus's cultural database identified as a formal greeting among Coalition species. Its translator device activated, speaking in English with only a slight delay. Commander Marcus Chen of the United Human Space Forces. I am Envoy Shimrath of the Interstellar Coalition. I come seeking assistance on behalf of the Council. Marcus did not return the formal greeting. He simply nodded, a human gesture that meant acknowledgement without commitment. Envoy Shimrath. This is unexpected. The Coalition has not contacted humanity in 75 years. Shimrath's pale blue skin darkened slightly, a sign that Marcus's database told him indicated embarrassment or shame. The Council acknowledges its past errors in judgment. We come now in humility, seeking aid for a crisis that threatens multiple member species. What kind of crisis? Marcus asked. He kept his voice neutral, professional. He had learned from Elena Vasquez's example, show no weakness, offer no openings, demand respect even from those who once mocked you. The Thrynn floated forward, its crystalline structure chiming softly. Our technological infrastructure is collapsing. We have relied for millennia on systems created by our ancestors, but we have lost the knowledge to repair them. 3 of our core member species are suffering from a medical plague that our ancient systems cannot cure. Millions die every day. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. Millions dying. Children, families, entire world suffering. The human part of him wanted to help immediately, to offer whatever assistance was needed. But he was not just a human. He was a commander representing a species that had been laughed at and dismissed by these same beings. Your medical technology is advanced, he said carefully. You have had thousands of years to develop cures for diseases. Why come to us? Shimrath's skin darkened further. Our medical technology is old, Commander. We stopped innovating centuries ago because we believed we had solved all solvable problems. This plague is new, evolved from contamination in a mining operation. Our systems cannot adapt quickly enough. Thomas Okonkwo stepped forward. He had been silent until now, but Marcus saw the anger in his eyes. You're saying that in 8,000 years of galactic civilization, you never encountered a new disease before? We encountered them, the shifting being said, speaking for the first time in a voice like water flowing over rocks. But we always had established protocols, ancient treatments, traditional methods. This plague is different. It evolves faster than our systems can analyze it. We need fresh thinking, new approaches, the kind of innovation that comes from necessity. Marcus understood then. The Coalition had been so powerful for so long that they had forgotten how to solve new problems. They had ancient technology that worked, ancient knowledge that sufficed, ancient methods that had always been enough. When those methods failed, they had no one trained to think differently. Humanity, meanwhile, had spent 75 years solving problem after problem with no help from anyone. They had been forced to innovate constantly, to question everything, to never accept that something was impossible just because it was difficult. I cannot make this decision alone, Marcus said. This requires authorization from Earth Command and consultation with our medical research divisions. Your envoy ship can remain docked here while we discuss your request. Shimrath performed another formal gesture. The Coalition is grateful for your consideration, Commander. We understand that humanity has reasons to refuse us. We understand that we treated you poorly when you came to us seeking partnership. We can only ask that you judge us by our need rather than our past behavior. Marcus gestured to his security team. Escort our guests to the diplomatic quarters. Provide them with anything they need within reason. As the Coalition envoys were led away, Thomas moved to Marcus's side. We're really considering this? He asked quietly. We have to, Marcus replied. Not because they deserve our help, but because millions of innocent beings are dying. That's not about politics or pride. That's about basic morality. Elena Vasquez walked away from them. Elena Vasquez walked away from control and condescension, Marcus corrected. She didn't walk away from beings in need. There's a difference. Back on the bridge, Marcus opened a secure channel to Earth. It would take several minutes for the signal to reach the homeworld and several more for a response to return. In the meantime, he pulled up his personal files and found the recording he had watched hundreds of times. It was Commander Elena Vasquez's last interview, given 2 weeks before her death. She sat in a chair in her home in New Seoul, sunlight streaming through windows that looked out over a city that had grown beyond anything the early 21st century could have imagined. The interviewer had asked her if she regretted the Apex rejection, if she ever wondered what humanity might have gained by accepting the Coalition's offer. Elena had smiled, that same confident smile she wore in every photograph and video from her historic mission. Regret, she had said. Not even for a moment. Yes, we faced challenges we might have avoided with Coalition help. Yes, we made mistakes we might have prevented with ancient wisdom. But we also achieved things no one believed we could achieve. We proved that humanity doesn't need permission to reach for greatness. She had leaned forward then, her old eyes still sharp and clear. The Coalition offered us safety and stagnation. I chose risk and growth. And I would make that choice again every single day. The communication channel chimed. Earth Command was responding faster than Marcus had expected. The face that appeared on his screen was Admiral Chen Yuki, no relation despite the shared surname. She was 60 years old with gray hair and the kind of weathered face that came from decades of military service. Commander Chen, she said without preamble. We've been monitoring Coalition communications. We know why they're there. Admiral, I need authorization to negotiate with them. If their medical crisis is as severe as they claim. Authorization granted, Yuki interrupted. But with conditions. We help them, Marcus, because that's what humans do. We help because we can, not because we owe them anything. But we don't give our technology away for free. We don't become their convenient solution. We negotiate terms that benefit humanity. Marcus felt relief wash through him. Understood, Admiral. What terms? First, full diplomatic recognition. They acknowledge humanity as an equal sovereign power, not a protected developing species. Second, complete access to Coalition trade routes and neutral zones. Third, technology exchange programs on our terms, not theirs. And fourth, they publicly acknowledge their error in judgment 75 years ago. That last one might be difficult, Marcus said. Pride is hard to swallow, even for dying civilizations. Yuki's smile was sharp. Then they need to decide what matters more, their pride or their people. Elena Vasquez made that calculation in 5 seconds. Let's see how long it takes the council. The negotiation took 3 days. Marcus met with Envoy Shimrath and the Coalition delegation in the Perseverance's conference room, a space designed for human comfort with gravity and atmosphere that Coalition beings found slightly uncomfortable. It was a small reminder of who held the power in these discussions. Shimrath presented the medical data first. The plague was devastating, spreading through 3 species that shared similar biochemistry. It attacked their immune systems in waves, each wave more deadly than the last. Coalition medical facilities had tried every traditional treatment with no success. Dr. Sarah Okafor, who had joined the negotiation team via holographic projection from Earth, studied the data with the kind of focused intensity that reminded Marcus of stories about her ancestor, Director James Okafor, who had stood beside Elena Vasquez at the Apex Assembly. This is solvable, Sarah said after 2 hours of analysis. We've dealt with similar cascading immune failures in our own populations. But the solution requires adaptive nanotechnology that constantly evolves to match the pathogen's mutations. We do not have such technology, the THRYNN admitted, its crystals chiming with distress. Our medical nanobots follow fixed programming established thousands of years ago. We know, Sarah replied. Her tone was not unkind, but it was firm. That's why you came to us. Marcus leaned forward. Earth Command has authorized me to offer assistance. But not as a gift. Not as a favor to be granted and forgotten. As a negotiated exchange between sovereign powers. He outlined Admiral Yuki's terms. With each condition, he watched the coalition envoy's reactions. Shimratha's skin cycled through several colors. The THRYNN's crystals vibrated with what the database identified as agitation. The shifting being became more liquid, a sign of distress. These terms are harsh, Shimrath said finally. The Council will find them difficult to accept. The Council found it easy to laugh at humanity 75 years ago, Thomas said coldly. The Council found it easy to offer us slavery dressed as protection. Forgive us if we don't prioritize the Council's comfort now. Millions are dying, the THRYNN chimed desperately. Every day we negotiate is another day of death. Marcus felt that twist in his chest again. It would be easy to simply help, to provide the cure and ask nothing in return. That would be the kind thing, the generous thing. But Elena Vasquez had not walked away from the Apex Assembly to have her descendants give away humanity's hard-won advantages for nothing. Then I suggest the Council accepts our terms quickly, he said quietly. Because every day they spend protecting their pride is another day their people die. We're willing to begin treatment immediately upon agreement. The choice is theirs. Shimrath stood and performed the formal gesture of respect that coalition beings used when acknowledging a superior negotiating position. I will take your terms to the Council. They will have an answer within 6 hours. The answer came in 4 hours. The Council accepted every term without modification. Within 24 hours, human medical teams were boarding coalition ships, carrying adaptive nanobots and treatment protocols that would save millions of lives. Within a week, the plague was contained. Within a month, it was eliminated completely. The galaxy watched. They watched as humanity, the species that had been mocked and dismissed as primitive children, solved in weeks what the ancient coalition could not solve in months. They watched as human negotiators extracted concessions that reshaped the political structure of galactic civilization. They watched as the youngest spacefaring species in the galaxy became, suddenly and undeniably, one of its most important powers. 6 months after the medical crisis ended, Marcus Chen stood once again in a presentation chamber. But not the Apex Assembly. This was a new facility, jointly built by humanity and 3 coalition species who had petitioned for closer alliance. It was smaller, more practical, designed for function rather than grandeur. Archon Zephyros was there, the same crystalline being who had dismissed Elena Vasquez 75 years ago. He was older now, his crystal structure showing signs of age that his species rarely displayed. He had requested this meeting personally. Commander Chen, Zephyros chimed, his voice carrying harmonics of something that might have been regret. I wanted to speak with you before I retire from council service. I'm honored, Archon, Marcus replied. Zephyros moved to the window, looking out at stars that he had been watching for 600 years. I was there, he said quietly. When your ancestor came to us. When we laughed at her. I was one of those who voted to offer humanity protected status because I genuinely believed it was in your best interest. He turned his crystalline body toward Marcus. I was wrong. Not just wrong in my assessment of human potential, but wrong in my fundamental understanding of what drives progress. We coalition species had become so comfortable, so certain of our superiority, that we forgot the most important truth about civilization. What truth is that? Marcus asked. That comfort is the enemy of growth. Safety is the enemy of innovation. When we offered your species protection, we were offering you the same cage we had built for ourselves. A beautiful cage, yes, but still a cage. Elena Vasquez understood this in a way that I, with 600 years of life, could not. Zephyros chimed softly, a sound like distant bells. She walked away from everything we offered because she knew that humanity needed to struggle, needed to fail, needed to solve its own problems in order to truly grow. And in 75 years, you achieved what we have not achieved in 8,000. We had good teachers, Marcus said diplomatically. We learned from your example what not to become. A harsh lesson, Zephyros acknowledged. But perhaps the most valuable one we ever gave you. He performed the formal gesture of deep respect, one that coalition beings used only in the presence of acknowledged superiors. Thank you, Commander Chen. Thank you for helping us despite our past behavior. Thank you for reminding the galaxy that arrogance and wisdom are not the same thing. After Zephyros left, Marcus stood alone in the chamber. He thought about Elena Vasquez, about the choice she made in a moment when the entire future of humanity hung in the balance. She could have accepted safety. She could have chosen the easy path. Instead, she chose freedom. She chose struggle. She chose the hard and uncertain path because she believed that humanity was stronger than the galaxy gave them credit for. She had been right. Marcus pulled up a communication channel and recorded a message to be sent back to Earth, to be archived with the historical records of the Apex rejection. This is Commander Marcus Chen, great-nephew of Commander Elena Vasquez, recording on the 75th anniversary of humanity's rejection of coalition membership. Today, we helped save millions of lives using technology we developed ourselves, out of necessity and determination. Today, the galaxy acknowledged us as equals, not through their generosity but through our achievement. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Great Aunt Elena, if you could see us now, I think you would be proud. Not because we became powerful, but because we stayed free. Not because we surpassed the coalition, but because we never stopped reaching for something better than what we were. You taught humanity that dignity matters more than comfort, that freedom is worth more than safety, that the greatest mistake anyone can make is to underestimate the power of those who refuse to accept limits. Marcus looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy that had once seemed so hostile and unwelcoming. The council laughed at us. They dismissed us. They offered us a cage made of protection and called it kindness. But you walked away without a word, and in that silence, you spoke volumes. You told them, and us, and all the generations to come, that humanity kneels to no one. He smiled, the same confident smile Elena Vasquez wore in every photograph. The galaxy is learning that lesson now. And it will never forget it. The message ended. Marcus saved it to the archives and turned to leave. Outside the window, human ships patrolled human space, protecting human colonies, living the future that Elena Vasquez had chosen for them with a single decision made in 5 seconds. The council had chuckled. They had dismissed humanity as children playing at greatness. Then humanity walked away in silence. And when the galaxy finally looked back, they found that the children had grown into giants while no one was paying attention. The greatest mistake the council ever made was not in how they treated humanity. It was in believing that their laughter meant anything at all to a species that had already decided it didn't need their approval. Humanity had never been asking for permission to be great. They were simply informing the galaxy of what was about to happen. And the galaxy, ancient and comfortable and certain of its place, had failed to listen until it was far too late.